Hello. It's been whole 14 hours since you've seen us last. This is how committed we are. Now it's daytime for me, night, well, kind of early morning for Jason. So it's Jason's turn to suffer, and so is JC's, for whom it's very late, and Ricardo, for whom it's also a little bit early. But we're back. And this is the first special episode of season 11 of Disasters Deconstructed, but also kind of the final episode of the first part of season 11. This is very complicated. And this special episode is been co-curated with the Journal of Disaster Studies. So a couple of months ago, Journal of Disaster Studies published a conversation between JC Gaillard, Ricardo Fuentealba, and Han Tran, in which they discussed the Prestige, Power, and Forgotten Values Manifesto, which we, of course, already talked quite a lot about on this podcast, and I'm sure you all know about the manifesto. But for those of you who don't know about the manifesto, so in May 2019, a collective of 20 plus scholars came together to publish the manifesto as a kind of call for change in how we research what we call disasters. It's a sort of plea for more grounded research informed by local understanding of the world, led by scholars familiar with local cultures and societies. And JC and I also recently published an edited volume, a plug, a bit of self-promotion, called Reimagining Disasters, Voices in the Pluriverse, in which we invited a few academics to draw upon local concepts and methodologies to revisit, challenge, and contest. Here we go. Thanks, Chris.
Right.
Everybody has it except for me. Somehow it's somewhere there on the shelf. JC disappeared in
I
embarrassment.
can't find mine.
I can't find it.
I got one here.
So anyway, we published this volume, and we invited our colleagues to to revisit, to challenge, to really contest the concept of disaster, to really think about that, and also think about how people experience hardship, harm, and suffering, and how this is reflected in what we call disasters. And so some of the authors who are joining us today are the contributors to this volume. So it's wonderful to have you, Ricardo, Chris, and Tech. JC also. It's wonderful to have you. Completely singled you out.
So let me give a bit of an introduction to our guest today. JC Gaillard doesn't really need an introduction, has been with us many times on Disasters Deconstructed, our really frequent guest. He's a professor of geography at the University of Auckland, and his work focuses on power and inclusion in disaster and disaster studies. Ricardo has already been with us quite recently. He helped us open this season. You'll remember, it's great to have you back, Ricardo. He's an assistant professor at the Instituto de Ciencias Sociales of the Universidad de O'Higgins in Rancagua, Chile. His research expertise relates to socio-spatial inequalities, disaster risk governance, environmental conflicts, and political economy of development from critical perspectives. Chris Gomez, feels like not too long since you were with us before, Chris. He's also familiar to our audience and is a professor at Kobe University. His research aims to break the boundaries between disciplines to provide more appropriate responses to sediment-related hazards and disaster risk in the face of climate change and population change. And Tech, who has just dropped off. Tech, I'm sure he'll be back. Tech Badhar is country director for Nepal, Bhutan, and India at One Seed Expeditions. With over 2 decades in tourism, he's worked for different research organizations focusing on tourism, disaster, caste, and ethnicity. Hopefully we'll get Tech back, but welcome to everybody. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Great. Well, I'm just monitoring my messages, seeing if Tech comes back. And we were also supposed to have Louis. Maybe they'll join later. I guess there might be all sorts of technical issues. So let's see. This might be quite a in and out flexible episode, and hopefully we'll have a conversation nevertheless. Well, JC, I want to start with you just to talk a little bit more about the manifesto. What are the key messages of the manifesto?
Thanks, Kenya. First, thanks for having us. I think it's good to be back. It's been a while, and yeah, I mean, we've been talking about the manifesto a few times already, and I think it's always good to remind our audience of where we came from with this document. I mean, it didn't pop out of nowhere. It was some sort of apex for a process of frustration, I guess, on the side of many of us during the 2010s. And it was some sort of frustration about how we had been doing disaster studies at the time. And some of us mid-career researchers at the time reached a point where we felt we had to do something about it, and something for the then up and coming generation of scholars who were kind of ready to challenge us. So it was more a reflection about what we did poorly, and I use the word poorly meaningfully, about our own practice. It was a reflection about what we were frustrated with regards to our own research. It was not a critique of others. It was a self reflection on our own work, and how we hadn't been able to meet the objectives of our mentors, of what our mentors expected us to do. And by mentors, I mean these people who put forward the so-called vulnerability paradigm in the 1970s and 80s. So we came together after the publication of the Disaster Studies Inside Out paper, which was kind of possibly some sort of trigger for all of this back in early 2019. And the manifesto has, I would say, 3 tenets. The first one is ontological, the second one is epistemological, and the third one is axiological. So the ontological dimension of the manifesto is really that there's no such a thing as a universal concept of disaster, and that we should move away from applying the concept across very diverse cultures and society as if it were to be a silver bullet. So we had to challenge how we conceive harm, hardship, and suffering, and explore other ways to understand how people experience hardship. And that leads us to the second aspect, which is the epistemological dimension of the document, which is about how we conduct research, what kind of concepts we use, what kind of theories we use, what kind of methods we use to understand what hardship means across different cultures and society. And to do this, we wanted to call for a change in terms of relationships and values to foster some more grounded understanding of what we call disaster in the West. And that required to level down or up, depending on where we position ourselves, our relationships with researchers from very diverse places and locations around the world. This didn't mean in our mind excluding anyone. And by, I think in the document we use local researchers or grounded researchers, I forgot. But it wasn't in our mind a matter of birthplace, a matter of passport. It was more a matter of being at home. And I like the term home scholar that we use in the conclusion of the book, I think, Xenia, from the Thai historian Vinny Chakul. It's about feeling at home and understanding the context where we conduct research and where we foster these local perspectives on hardship. And a caveat to close my intro, and I think an important caveat. The Manifesto Collective, including all of us who signed the document in the first place, are not a homogeneous collective. And I think this is important, otherwise we would be antithetical with our own ethos somehow. Some of us defend a more or less orthodox Marxist position, some are in a post-Marxist space, some are in the anarchist space, some are decolonial scholars, some are in the post-colonial space. There's a whole bunch of diverse kind of perspectives that coexist. And I think this coexistence and hybridity of our own perspectives. And again, from a sort of Western thread of political theories, but it's a very diverse collective. It's not in any way a monolithic normative way of understanding the world. And that's an important caveat. And that's all for now.
Thank you.
Thanks, JC, for the intro. We actually I was at the Natural Hazards Workshop recently in Colorado, and we had a roundtable that was designed around the Manifesto and Accord. And I say this because it's been, I think, gathering momentum and helping people shape their processes. And our roundtable is about the ethics of engaged research, and was very influential in helping shape the contributions of the panelists. So wanted to ask the rest of our gathering this morning about this, like why do you engage with the Manifesto? Let's start with Chris.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having us today. Just maybe let me turn the question on its head. Not why did you engage with the Manifesto in the first place, but can anyone afford not to engage today with the Manifesto? In the sense that, like, can anyone even today come from outside the community and engage with that community as just a mean of scientific production, a mean of academic self-promotion? All of that sounds horrible, but if you just look at it with a bit of perspective, that's what has happened a lot, at least in the end of the 20th century, in the first decade of the 21st century, where what we call helicopter scientists have come in. And hopefully the Manifesto is kind of opening our eyes to, or at least framing that frustration that JC was mentioning. So why not engage? How can you not engage? At the same time, I don't like this idea of engaging. I would almost feel that it has to be, in my view, it's only my view, of course, it has to be part of the engagement. It has to be part of doing disaster risk studies. You should not be thinking of it as being something as an extra that you do. It's like, oh, do you do your ethical form and do you do ethical research or not? That doesn't come into the question. And I think it's part of that. Scientifically, if you look at the ontological part that JC was mentioning, I think it's really interesting because very often science, like very more often than none, is saying, oh, that's the truth. And we are aiming at the truth, like if there is anything as such. But I always like to remind my colleagues who come out with like their big guns and all those simulation and very precise numbers, telling them, well, like the same very clever scientists once were all convinced that the Earth was flat. How is not this ringing a bell when you think about even science being relative to a time, to a scientific community? And I think it's the same with disaster risk. So from my perspective, it's really hard not to engage or not even like to see it as being part of disaster risk.
Thanks so much, Chris. Let's come to Ricardo next. Ricardo, you hear me?
It's my
Yes.
turn, right?
Yeah, same
Okay,
question.
awesome. I'm having some issues with the audio. I think my audio set's still sleeping here in Chile. So well, thanks so much for the invitation, and of course, JC for introducing the ideas behind the manifesto. I guess on my end, the manifesto and the people around the manifesto was for me a way to understand that there were many people like in the field, like out there in disaster studies or in sociology or geography and in philosophy and so on, who were, I guess, doing like some sort of similar critical work as what I wanted to do, like and this is some stuff that we also explain with JC in the paper in JDS, but my own coming up was always a bit critical, and I never understood and never wanted to do research that was detached from the context, like having this sort of truth-seeking science and research about the ivory tower way of doing academia and so on. And when I started reading and getting into disaster studies, I realized there were a lot of work being done that way. That was a bit like overly technical, not very critical, and looking at things unproblematically. So in a way, for me, I started engaging with the manifesto in a very organic way to understand that I was like part of this critical scholarship, and I embrace the spirit of the manifesto in 100%, especially with all the things that JC was telling just now. Like, and I remember the discussion about inclusion, exclusion that JC mentioned just now. But I mean, at least for me, it was nice to know that within this field that I was getting into, they were having these conversations, like this political conversation, this ontological conversation, these epistemological conversations that I think were very important in the field and in disaster studies. So I don't know, like for me, it was very organic to get into the field, and it was like exciting times to be to grow into disaster studies.
Thanks, Ricardo. Okay, how about you?
Yeah, so for me, the manifesto, this encouraged me to bring indigenous voice in the conversations among the scholars. So I, as a disaster scholar or researchers for more than 4 years, what I've learned from the people that, the local peoples or indigenous peoples, they have a different understanding of interpreting disasters, which is beyond what we generally hear from the global literatures. Uh, and I think, this is the right place to bring those untold stories. So because many of the disasters, explanations which are not shared, which we cannot see or we cannot find out in the literatures, because many large of the researchers, they just go to the research fields, but they are not bringing the local voice of the peoples. And then the question is that we are doing the research for the community, and then we are ignoring their voices, their understanding, their belief, their cultural practices. Yeah.
Thanks, Zach.
That's really interesting. I kind of like how, whilst we're all, I think, sharing generally the same motivation, yet the intricacies of the motivation are slightly different. So thank you so much for sharing this. But obviously, we've never intended, and Manifesto certainly isn't a kind of silver bullet as to how we study disasters, right? This is just a way of kind of helping people think, I guess, and help ourselves think. So what do you think are the main challenges of the manifesto, and how do we overcome this? Tech, let's start with you. You're big on the screen, so let's go back to you. So what are the main challenges and how do we overcome?
I guess there are two challenges. So the one is the challenges themselves for the researchers, because it is depending on whether they are bringing the unique perspective of the local people or not. So that one is for the researcher themselves, whether she or he is bringing the unique perspective of the local people or not. And second is disasters is not just like a subject of the researcher, but also it gives a good foundation for the disaster studies, by involving the government officials and policymakers. um, but in Nepal's the stage of the government is just listenings, and it's more focused on the disaster governance. So when the government officials and then the policymakers, they involved in the disaster conversations, I hope that this develop the curriculum, along with the indigenous practices of disaster mitigations, and this is definitely benefit for everyone.
Thanks, Tech. Ricardo, what do you think? What are the main challenges for you? What do you think?
Thanks. Well, again, like I don't want to repeat myself from what JC, Heng Tai, and myself spoke back in, when was that? Like January 2020, February 2025, when we had the conversation that then ended up being published in JDS. But I think the manifesto, in a way, opens a lot of reflections. And one of the things that we mentioned there is about the role of early career researchers in actually embracing the spirit of the manifesto, and I think there's some risk in not discussing this in particular, given the more structural issues that need to change in our neoliberal universities, neoliberal academia, and so on. Because it's like you can, of course, have important, a lot of research projects, a lot of funding, and so on. But those people, like those locals or people like in their context researching their own disasters and so on, they really need to have like steady income. They need to have some jobs and so on. So I guess in order to develop more critical, more engaged research in the local spaces, like the manifesto, again, it's not an issue by itself of the manifesto, but I guess it's about opening up the opportunities for more structural transformation in how research and how knowledge production is being developed, and that's again, that's particularly important given the crisis of, I don't know, of the academic job market and of unemployment and so on, but I guess that's one issue that it's not a problem of the manifesto, of course, but something that we need to start having, a conversation we need to start having, especially for early career researchers.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think it's a really important reflection, because we are all operating in the conditions of neoliberal academia, right? And kind of implementing the values that we have are sometimes impossible for those who are in precarious positions. Simply because the funding wouldn't be available, and the kind of the power isn't there to exercise. So thanks, Ricardo. It's a really something for us to kind of ponder about. Chris, for you, what's the main challenge?
Oh, the main challenge. I would like to put it in a positive light, maybe.
I love how you twisted our questions today. We expect no less from you.
There are two points maybe I would like to make. It's about education. I think that if we want to overcome some of the challenge that we see as challenge today, Ricardo talked about the young academics, and you did too. I think that we need to be able to have in our textbook and in the university curriculum, those people who are going to become the next generation academics, they need to feel that it's almost organic for them to have like, they can refuse the manifesto. It's not about like being a doctrine, but having that as a very early stage in the development of researchers and academics, I think is essential. So that's one part, and I think it feeds into what Tech was saying about the officials. A lot of officials go through the university systems as well. And then there is the other side. And this is, I think, the most difficult part. What I would like to see happening is that in disaster studies, we are put at par with the locals. Like right now, there is this power balance between the academics, the one who knows, and then the local and whoever the community. But what about the community gets into university? What about the community actually becomes the teacher as well? And that's only when we have actually this parity of power that we can start to actually have a meaningful engagement over time through the manifesto. So that was the put positively. The negative part of it is like none of this really exists right now. We are in a structure where we can't, we're talking about the money and the funding. The preoccupation of universities today, they are not maybe well aligned with what we are. We had the chance to bring together in that manifesto. To conclude that short remark, when I got to know JC, I was moving to New Zealand at that time, and he had moved to New Zealand just before. I was really impressed by one of the things that he did in some of his paper. He had put as a first author the community. And for me, it meant a lot in the sense that it's a real recognition of the importance of the community and that idea that it has to come up as part of one of the main actors, if not the main actor of research. And I haven't seen so many people who have the guts actually to go that far into putting them as first author. It's only a token, but it's very meaningful, I think, in the sense of imaging the ideas that we have in the manifesto. I'm talking too much as usual.
No, this is great. And also you've given me like a wonderful segue to JC. JC, what do you think is the challenge? You're muted. There had to be somebody. There's always someone in the meeting, isn't it?
I was well behaved, right? I muted myself. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to repeat what everyone said because I agree with everything, obviously. And I guess most of the paper we published with Ricardo, this conversation in JDS, is about challenges, basically, and the neoliberal environment we operate in at the moment. But I think if we try to go a bit beyond that, and I was trying to think off the top of my head while you were all talking, I think how this entire system has made the concept of disaster and disaster risk reduction as a field of policy and practice a common sense. That it's become not only appealing to do disaster research because you're working towards the greater good, as you would say, Chris. It's something like you're doing something good for the greater community. So things have been normalized to the point that nowadays, if you say that there's no such a thing as a disaster, and we say that in our region in the Philippines, for example, because we don't have a concept to translate disasters, so we have to rely on loans from other languages. But if you say that there's no such a thing as a disaster, then you become almost, I've got a local word in my mind, but you almost become a villain because you challenge something which is considered you challenge research which is meant to be for the the well-being and the good of the whole world. And I've felt that recently, and it's a very hard situation to be in, because you want to change the system, but you want to challenge it in a way which is meaningful and with people kind of following you in. And amongst academics, it's easier to do than sometimes in the space of policies and actions, as you said, tech, because it's even more normalized and common sense within the field of disaster risk reduction. So how do we navigate that space? How do we challenge in a way which is meaningful for everyone, and it's convincing enough to challenge the common sense? I'm not sure if I've made any sense here, because I was thinking off the top of my head, but I think there's something to think about.
Completely. Yeah. Thanks, JC.
Thank you all for those reflections. And we've, as you all know, we tried to ask our guests some similar questions in our seasons to get some continuity. So I'm excited to hear your answers to this next segment. We want to ask all of you, what is your main hope for disaster studies? I think it's an especially poignant question to reflect on as we talk about the manifesto. So I want to start with you, Ricardo, on this one.
Sure. Well, luckily I've been here before, so I'm not sure if I have answered this in a previous episode.
Let's see if you change your answer.
And I have tried to think and write and research this, but I hope we can advance a more critical and reflexive field. Of course, one that is built through solidarity and collaboration, and also one that's able to speak truth to power, like whatever power is, and so that we can really try to change things. I always go back to the point is to change it, to really make trying to have some sort of praxis in what we do. Like, of course, there's a privilege. I acknowledge the privilege of having like a stable position, of being able to be heard and so on, to participate in these kinds of settings. But it's always nice to try to push the envelope more in order to make it even more critical, more reflexive, and more transformative, in order to, I don't know. One thing that I've been thinking lately is about how we don't have some sort of democratic way of distributing risks. It's always crossed by power. It's always crossed by either capitalism or authoritarianism or gender inequalities and so on. So I guess one hope that I have for the future is to really, I don't know, develop a more democratic way of thinking about disasters. And my cat Cometa is here with me, so I know JC always asks for photos of her. So
Good to see her.
Thanks, Ricardo. Let's go to Tech. What's your main hope for disaster studies, Tech?
So my personal hope is that I'm very optimistic. So I think some of the the points that we bring in the conversation is a kind of a kind of the hope like Egyptians that we can do or not. But I think if we think critically and be good researchers, professional researchers, and then reflect from the field, I think it is a very doable. And the research is, I guess, is It is again the reciprocal between research and research communities.
Thanks, Tech, for this message of hope, which is super important. JC, what's your main hope?
I think I want to pick up on Ricardo's point about privilege, because I think it's an important one. And I think we talk about it in the paper, but it needs to be re-emphasized, I think. I think the future is on us who benefit from that privilege, and especially on us who thankfully don't have to worry too much anymore about promotion. Some of us are part of the establishment of the university as well. And it's about us to open up the space for early career researchers to actually challenge the system. It's about us who have editorial positions with journals to make it possible for our journals to publish things in different languages, in different formats. I mean, Chris published a cartoon in DPM a couple of years ago, I think. It's about us to offering these opportunities for different ways of thinking, different pathways to understanding the world, to be heard and to be listened to. We can't expect early career researchers who are in precarious positions to do that. Even people who have positions but who have to worry about tenure, I know in the US it's a big thing, who have to worry about promotion. We can't expect these people to not publish in English, but publish in local languages. Because we know, I mean, we can't be selfish and tell them, okay, no, don't worry about your own career, your families and everything, but join the bandwagon. I mean, we can't do that. Again, it's a matter of values and relationships. So it's on us. And hence the importance of these this collective of mid-career researchers back in the 2010s, because now most of us are in the latter stages of our careers, and we have this responsibility. We messed things up once in the 2000s, because if the field went into the wrong direction of normalizing things, normalizing concepts, normalizing methodologies, it's because of us. We messed things up. So now we need to fix the problem, and we need to open up that space for other opportunities to emerge.
Thanks, JC. And finally, Chris, what's your main hope?
Well, I don't want to repeat what JC and the rest of the team have been saying, although I fully agree with it. But I really feel like not doing anything is like those people who have been bringing on us climate change problem and telling the next generation, well, we're out your problem now. So we have indeed benefited from this system. And that's why we are in position today. So I think we have a responsibility towards the young generation. But that's what JC was saying. If I want to look a bit further and make sure that all of you will hate me at the end of this session, I would like to say that I wish that disaster studies disappear. Just get rid of it. That no more. In the sense that we reach the end of history, in the sense that the way we do disaster studies is just not here anymore. So it's easy to say when I'm in this position where I have my tenure, and it's easy. What I mean by that is we have university systems that are inherited from a construction of knowledge and a practice of knowledge, and the use of knowledge as a tool and power over people who do not have access to that academic knowledge. And whether or not we fight it, like we are still in that machine, and we are pushing that machine power differences. So we all wish that it all disappear once we are gone, because being in a comfortable position is just way too good. I'm sure for everyone, I included. But at the same time, when I reflect about it, I think that the only way that we get out of that rabbit hole is that the actual university system as we know it just implode. And I can't see, maybe too negative or too pessimistic, but I think we need to rethink the whole way we are engaging with knowledge and how knowledge is used as a source of power over all the others. And that's what I was trying to say earlier. Like when communities are put at par with the knowledge power given at university, we have to be on the same bandwagon, like JC was saying earlier. But not on the academics. Everyone has to be on the same train if we want to have actually to make a meaningful difference. And right now we are on the train and we are looking people who are walking by and like we are like moving forward. It's like, oh, keep up and keep on walking. It's like it's not working. And regardless of how much we try to change things, as long as that train keeps on moving, people who are walking by the train track, there is no way they can keep up.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I actually really like this metaphor because you're absolutely right. Go on, Jason.
Yeah, no, just to pick up on your point, Chris, because I think it's an important one. I don't think many people will disagree with you about the field disappearing. And I was just looking back at the editorial of the first issue of Disasters back in 1977. And the editor said back then, we hope this journal will cease its publication as soon as possible. And it was 49 years ago. And I can't remember, I think it was David who led that, David Alexander. I mean, it was maybe not for exactly the same reason that they said that back then, but there was common sense in that again, we didn't take on in our research for the subsequent few decades.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at where we are now, with the just current state of the world, right? Not just academia. We are nowhere near finishing. In fact, it's kind of seems like, unfortunately, starting to become more salient than ever. But I think what we're also seeing is a lot of reinvention of the wheel, where many people are not familiar with kind of thinking with literature, right, and just kind of producing the same thought in a slightly different way of articulating it. So this has really been great. I like that there's been some optimism today because Jason and I really tried to think about the hope and to think about the perhaps future without disasters, because I think for all of us this is the more we learn, the more worried we kind of become about the state of the world. But hopefully we can do something about this. So thank you all so much for joining us today and for staying up late and for getting up early and just for all the amazing work that you do and for really making Manifesto meaningful rather than just some words on the paper that nobody ever reads. For our audience, we really hope you enjoyed our special episode today. If you haven't read the conversation published in the JDS yet, please do. Journal of Disaster Studies is free to access, so it's fully open access, and you can find the conversation online. And please check out the manifesto on the Radix website. We now have over 700 signatories. So if you enjoy reading it, and if you agree in principle with the ideas that we're promoting through the manifesto, please sign it if you haven't done so yet. On this, Jason and I will now take a little summer break, and we will be back with a new episode on the 21st of September, when we will continue our season 11 all the way to Christmas. Thank you again for joining us, and see you all again soon. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.